opportunity that you're going to really, truly be fulfilled and happy with. These are the type of questions you have to conquer, so to speak. But once you get those answers, create your vision. You know, what do you want your life to look like? Well, that'll be a big part of what your vision is. You know, do you want a type of position where you're always traveling all over the world, you know, because you're constantly dealing with new offices all over the world? Or do you want the type of job where you have a lot of flexibility? Do you want the type of job where you're going to be working on your own and you have a lot of quiet to focus on the problems you're working on? Or do you want the type of job where you're going to be closely working in an office with a ton of other people that are like-minded and equally passionate about what they do? It depends, and that'll probably differ from person to person, but it's definitely something worth considering. So once you create that vision, you got to commit. And this is just bottom line. You have to commit. If you're not truly committed to your vision and taking a long-term approach to it, then it's really easy to throw in the towel. It's really easy to say, oh, I wanted to have this position, but it didn't work out, and people kept telling me I wasn't qualified. And if you're not really committed to that job, you'll start believing those people. You know, they said I'm not qualified, and if you hear that enough times, oh, well, I'm not qualified. Right? It doesn't mean you can't get there. It doesn't mean that one day you won't ever be qualified. Right? It means you can be. Maybe that day's just not today. And if you truly commit to where you want to go, it makes it very, very tangible to get there. And it also makes your life along the way, very much more smooth than it would be otherwise. So you create, you commit, and then the last part is the delve, and that's go, go, go. Right? And another really good business writer, he actually coined this phrase, but I think it's really valuable because that's what you have to do. You got to go. You got to immerse yourself. Right? If you're trying to break into something that you've never done before, right? If you didn't go to school for this, or even if you did go to school for this and don't have any formal experience, right? You got to throw yourself in the deep end. Right? That's how you learn. So you got to immerse yourself with all the information. Really just try to absorb as much. Be like a sponge. Try to get as much out of that industry,
right,
out of every article you read, out of every book you read, out of everyone you talk to who might be in that industry or maybe tangibly related to that industry. Immerse yourself in it and really make that a priority. Consciously be looking for ways to learn about that industry.
Nick, we have one question here that's here from one of the attendees is how do you maintain that attitude? How do you get that go, go, go when I guess you wake up in the morning and you feel like no, no, no?
Yeah.
What can you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a key part that has to come at the beginning, and that's managing your own expectations. Right? Anyone who set a goal sets a goal saying, one day I'm going to do this. Now, realistically, most of those people that know that goal won't happen tomorrow. That goal won't happen a week from now. That goal probably won't happen this year. And you know what? In a lot of cases, it won't happen for a decade or maybe a couple of decades. But if everyone was only looking at short-term goals, then no one would really have the long-term vision of where they want to go. So I guess my point is realize that those days when you get the door slammed in your face are going to happen. Manage your expectations up front. If you know that someone's going to slam the door in your face and you know it's going to happen, when it actually happens, you're not devastated. You're like, oh, well, I wish it didn't go that way. But I kind of knew this would happen eventually. And I think that's a big part of making sure that when the tough days do roll around and when those blows to your efforts and your ego do come around and happen, they're easier to deal with, you know. And one of the other things that I think is really important is maintaining that go, go, go attitude is knowing why you're doing it. You know, Nietzsche's I'm a big fan of his work from back in the day. He said that he who has a why can bear almost any how.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, and that's really what we're talking about here. Is that's why you ask all those questions. so that you can find something that's worth your effort. You're
great.
dedicating your life to this work. And you could be the most efficient person in the world. But if you're efficient and successful at doing something that has no meaning or purpose to your life, it's going to be really, really difficult for you to be very good at it, right? And it's also going to be really difficult for you to truly enjoy that work and handle the days that are rough. So I guess my point is, if you have a good why for what you're striving for, if you have a true reason and a meaning to be striving for it, when you get hit and you get knocked down, it's a lot easier to get back up.
Boy, that's a great point.
And there's stories that you hear guys that are, basically past the line dead on Everest trying to get to the top, and they climb down with no use of their legs, right? With 2 pickaxes on their arms, and that's it. Because all they can think of is seeing their children one more time. Physically, doctors would say that's impossible. They can't do that. It's not possible to live in those conditions at that height and do what they did. But those stories happen all the time because they had the strong enough why of seeing their children, seeing their wife, or whatever it was.
Yeah. I think one other thing that could help is someone was just mentioning about one of the audience participators here mentioned another thing is hanging around with quote unquote other job seekers, and then the other is having short-term goals, as you mentioned. Have daily or hourly goals and relish in the success of them. It's not just, I got a job offer, okay, that's what I'm waiting for, and I understand, but there's many successes along the way that you should congratulate yourself and pat yourself on the back for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's really good advice. That's really good advice. Because it's important to remember that the process is what matters. The result is merely the result of your process, right? What you did throughout it. And so take pride in the short term, the easier, more manageable goals that you're doing.
Sure. Very good.
And doing that, they sort of naturally will compound into the life that you want. So I hope that that did an okay job of answering the participants' questions.
Very good.
The next part is work smart and hard. Most kids when they're right out of college have trouble doing both because they might understand a little bit of how to work hard, but then they have no experience and they fall down when it comes to working smart. And so really, one of the things we talked about the other day again, Bill, is developing your elevator speech. And this comes back to really being able to articulate your vision. Really, that's what an elevator speech is. Articulate your vision and maybe a couple of selling points on why that person should help you get there. Because if you can't articulate to someone else what you're looking for, right, how are they possibly able to help you? And I think one of the things that's interesting is, we live in a society that is community-based, right? No one here knows how to do everything, right? We're not really subsistence farmers. I mean, there's probably a couple in the U.S., but for the most part, we rely on each other for trade. Some people know how to bring electricity to my house. I know how to build a house, and someone else knows how to make sure the plumbing is working properly. We all have different skills, but we're all working together to make sure that the job gets done. So you're constantly interacting with other people, and all of those interactions are opportunities to either learn more about what you're trying to learn about, or to potentially make connections with people that could help you along your way. This is really important because if you can't articulate, if someone said, guess what, Bill, I really, really like you, and I know we just met, but you seem like a nice person, I'd love to help you out. He goes, well, what can I do for you? How can I help you, Bill? If you don't have an answer to that question, you think, hey, this is what I'm looking for, and this would probably be one of the ways you could help me out, he's not going to be able to do that for you.
That's right.
And so that's why the elevator speech is valuable. The other part is, make sure that you're being resourceful. Use your resources, your family, friends, alumni. They are in the same scenario where they're constantly interacting with other people as well. Make sure that all of your family and friends and maybe even some of your alumni directors or whatnot have an understanding of what type of opportunity you're looking for. So that if someone randomly came across the table and said, hey, I work in a niche industry and this is what I do, and your mom happens to be speaking to that person, they're going to be like, you won't believe it, but that's exactly what my daughter wants to be doing. You know, and that happens more than you think. And that's how a lot of the jobs that don't make it to the job boards online get filled.
That just happened, Nick. That just happened actually Monday. Got an email from an individual who's using our system, and it's exactly right. It was a friend who was talking to an employer and was able to communicate to that employer what this individual did effectively, and the employer called the candidate as a result of that. So yes, knowing your elevator pitch, your speech, and being able to communicate that effectively to friends and family, and as you have down here, alumni, boy, that is powerful.
Yeah, and if you guys Google elevator pitch or elevator speech, really, I mean, there's so many resources out to come up on it, and you can just sort of browse through there and get an idea of what's good practice and what's not.
Yep.
And then those are pretty helpful, I think. And then the last part is working smart and hard. This one's probably a little bit more on the hard part, but there is a chance that you are possibly passionate and have a skill set of someone that's completely unique, you know, and that's not unlikely because a lot of us do. But there is a chance that maybe what you're looking for hasn't been done before at a particular company in the U.S. or maybe even overseas. So you're really out there with a machete hacking your way through the rainforest, so to speak. And sometimes that's what you have to do. Sometimes you have to forge your own path. And a lot of times when you're the first one exploring new territory, it's not the most efficient way to do something. But that's why it's important to make sure that you're constantly keeping up on your efforts and what's working and what's not working, and analyzing and making sure that you're evaluating what's going on and just finding ways to improve on that. But sometimes you do have to forge your own path. And if you do have an understanding, if you ask the questions we talked about and you know what your vision is, and you're steadfast and committed to that vision, you'll be able to do that. And I encourage people that feel like maybe that's something they have to do and they want to do, I encourage people to do that. And those are the people, I think, more than ever, that need to be willing to accept failure with part of the territory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the last step here is finish strong. And I think this is a great one. There's a great little quote that we talk about after you take action. And that is, action that lacks planning is a long journey to success. But planning without action is a quick road to failure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty straightforward. But if you're the most hardworking, go type individual around, right? Let's say all you do is send out resumes, but you send out more resumes per hour than anyone else in the world. Let's say you have the highest resume per hour rate, and you send out resumes because you're committed to getting a job 22 hours a day. I'm willing to bet that you'll find a job relatively quickly, you know. But it's a lot of hard work, and you might not find a job that you want. You know, you'll eventually get there. You'll eventually get there. But if you had a little bit of planning and use that same effort in the planning, you might get to where you want to go much quicker. And that's really why